when I was a student of architecture, when I was doing professional practice, the guy who was teaching us did arbitrations all the time. And he said, if somebody offers you a job, say to them right away, you have no expertise whatsoever, and if they really want to employ you as an architect, tell them it's absolutely up to them, and it's their own responsibility. And I've never forgotten that, because almost all the things he did were anecdotal, but they all turned out to be true. But what I'm going to talk about a little bit here is saying, okay, modern methods of construction. Maybe I should ask how many people actively employ these things or recommend them to clients or whatever. Not sure. Right, okay. Why? Why modern methods of construction? Why now? I mean, a lot of the things I've been looking at in the last little while to do with housing, because housing is one of the big challenges of the age, not just here in the UK, but around the world. As you can see here, 80% of the world's population will live in cities very shortly. They're gravitating from the countryside to the city. And in China, for example, they need to rehouse 300 million people, in the next few years. It's a phenomenal demand for housing. The only way you can do these things is to build quickly, build accurately, build efficiently. And but we also need to think about it in terms of we can't do it the traditional way. We can't build in traditional methods, and that creates all sorts of issues with, in a sense, the perils that Charles was just describing. But and it also goes back to what Pierre was talking about in terms of lean construction. How do we do things? Well, for me, this goes back to, I remember the Latham report, the Egan report. These guys were recommending construction excellence, about how to make things more efficient, how the industry becomes more efficient. And by and large, the industry has just ignored those things. I'll probably ask you again a question. Has anybody read these documents? Yeah? Hey! If I asked architects that, it'd be a 0. And we've had lots of them in Scotland. I actually published this one for the Scottish Building Standards. I have a publishing company as well. And there's been a lot of discussion about mainstreaming modern methods of construction and so on. But we're still, you go around and go past building sites all the time, you see the same old laborious things going on, affected by the weather and different things. And your point about things don't happen, they don't happen because we do things in a way that's contrary to the circumstances, the environment we work in. And then there's BIM. I don't know how many of you work in places that are BIM enabled. Oh my God, 1. Shocker, really. Okay. Okay. I mean, there's a real problem about this because the BIM in June, in 2 months' time, public buildings in the UK, certainly in England and Wales, if you're not BIM enabled as an organisation, no chance of getting a public contract. That's a huge percentage of work, right? And like in so many things, people leave it to the very last minute. I did a thing with engineers a few years ago. Eurocode 5 was due to come in. 10 years that they had to build up to. In the month before it was due to come in, with 500 engineers turn up, wanting desperate to know about it. And it's the same thing with BIM. A BIM workstation for an architect is maybe £10,000. So but 70% of the profession work in offices of 5 people or less. They've come through the construction recession barely, hanging on by their fingertips. It's a lot of money. And that's a capital cost, if you like, in software and so on. The actual training costs for these things are the bit that's really hard. And I think that's where we really need to lobby as an industry. The agencies like Scottish Enterprise and so on say, you need to support this stuff. We need to say, if the bulk of the professions are in small businesses, SMEs, we need support to do these things properly and not expect it to carry the can and end up in the kind of situation that Charles was talking about. So, modern methods of construction. Now, in Scotland, we do most of our housing, 70% plus, is platform timber frame. And a lot of it is prefabricated off-site in sheds. This is a very modern shed, it's a very large shed, it's very automated, and they'll take on most people's designs. It is BIM enabled. They just don't get anybody giving them drawings that are BIM enabled. But they can do pretty much anything. They're not doing standard stuff going through it. They, use designer or whatever will come to them with a set of drawings. They will make it work through their system. And out at the other end, things come through this whole process out the back, shrink wrapped, complete wall units, complete floor units, ready to go to site. houses go up very quickly, buildings go up very quickly. And that's the process really with the way MMC works and the way offsite fabrication works these days. And I suppose what I'm really going to talk about in a lot of this is where we see offsite fabrication going, because it's more accurate, it's quicker, it's cleaner, it's healthier, in terms of safer. But it doesn't mean it's about repetition, because I think there's a perception in professionals that a lot of anything, when you say prefabrication, people think back to little houses you got after the war and things like that, what generally get called prefabs and so on. But this building here, it's a Maggie Centre up at Inverness, and it's standard platform timber frame construction, which we do in our sleep in Scotland. But because of the way it's designed with computer software and so on, there's actually 3,000 different bits of timber in there. And it's meant that because from the design computer to the CNC cutting machine, it can be put together, components assembled and so on, and very quickly, and you end up with using standard prefabrication techniques to end up with very unusual, very elegant building, but certainly very different from your sort of standard 3-bedroom house type, if you like. And prefabrication is not about repetition. I mean, this building here I saw in Angers in France. It was under construction. There's an old concrete frame. They created walls that curve out so that in that level there, the services are run outside of the frame because the floor-to-ceiling heights are so low they can drop the ceiling. But actually, it's a prefabricated system. You can see the line down here. These walls came in a series of panels and all done. So although it looks very abstracted and very one-off on-site construction, it's not. It's all been done in the factory. And that's part of the point of making it, is that you can get an awful lot of variation, a lot of things done in safe, healthy working conditions and accurate, precise conditions. A lot of the work I was doing at Edinburgh Napier University was looking at developing a whole range of new products from Scottish grown wood, but our target was to create 20 or more new timber products or construction systems or processes. And we had European funding for this, and for 4 years we were developing things, but cross-laminated timber was really the big thing, and it's a big thing more widely in the construction industry. I'll ask another question. Anybody familiar with it or have worked with it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, right, okay. Because, around the world at the moment, huge amounts of projects are going on in cross-laminated timber. Because back to my first slide of the globe, I'm looking at sustainability and the whole issue about how we do things, looking to build more sustainably with renewable building materials, and what's the predominant kind of renewable building material we have. And I suppose way back in the mid-1980s in Switzerland, they began to look at overproduction in their forestry. They began to look at how to use lower quality timber. How do you engineer that into new products that do different things? And cross-laminated timber evolved out of that. There's a huge number of projects, for example, in London going on at the moment in cross-laminated timber, but the centre of it is Central Europe, in Austria, Switzerland, southern Germany, where they're manufacturing huge panels which are pre-cut on site. So the drawing you do here goes to the factory there, no intervening drawing, it's cut, walls, doors are cut out, cable roots are cut out, everything else. The panels come to site with a 2mm tolerance, and they go up very quickly. Any of you went to the Housing Expo in Inverness a few years ago, in 2010 I think it was. I think of the 55 houses, I think there were 4 that were designed to be cross-laminated timber. And the idea of the project, of the expo, was to look at other ways of building housing, different from conventional house builders and so on. And we took a lot of Scottish Government ministers up there. They looked around, they said, oh, this is fantastic, what's this? Oh, great, where's it from? Switzerland, where's this from? Sweden, where's this from? Blah, blah, blah. And we almost went around the globe in all the products that were used in those houses. And the Scottish Government minister said, cross-laminated timber, that we can do with our forestry. We want this in production in Scotland because it adds value to the forest resource. We're creating engineered products. It's not selling logs at the side of the road for buttons, it's selling engineered products that have high value. So we started in a project. We had to buy a press because there wasn't one in Britain to do it. We made panels. We looked at, we did a lot of testing, structural testing, fire testing, different things. We looked at 6 different species in Scotland, the standard production species we have: Sitka, larch, Douglas fir, Scots pine. We also looked at a couple of wildcats, hemlock and Lawson cypress, and we did mix and match things as well. We took them down to Timber Expo in England. Huge response from architects, engineers and others. I knew this would be the case because for several years I've been getting calls saying, why can't we get these products made from UK grown wood? And you had to say, no, we can't. Because in this country we don't invest long term in that kind of manufacturing process, these kind of facilities. And we don't make glulam really, and we import it all from abroad, yet we've been using it since at least the 60s for everything from swimming pools to church halls to you name it. We import, we're the 3rd biggest importer of timber in the world. We import 80% of our construction timber. So the more that we can use our own forest resources to do things, the more we can have an impact on the balance of payments and so on. But, so we made this stuff. We put it into a little visitor centre in Ravenscraig at the BRE Innovation Park. So we made shear walls of cross-laminated timber. That's the little building, the little visitor centre, it's still there. We left the timber exposed so people could see what this new product was. It's been used in the Commonwealth Games Village for a lot of the shear walls there. So we weren't in commercial production, if you like, at that point. And in fact, now we're at a stage where a huge facility has been bought to manufacture this. It will take us another 18 months to 2 years to get to that point, because you have to get all the machines bespoke and so on. But meanwhile, we're being overtaken because down in England, L&G Property have decided they are going to build thousands of houses under the UK government programme. They've got a huge facility in Leeds where they're expected to produce prefabricated 3,000 houses a year. They're setting up a factory in Hull to make cross-laminated timber. They've ordered all the machines, and if they don't get a good price from the sawmills here, they'll just import timber. But they're looking to just, that's only for their own production, 3,000 houses a year. So that's where we're at. But come back to prefabrication, because we're seeing nowadays lots of new building types, different kinds of buildings. This is in fact a library in Norway, but it's repeat glulam beams, if you like, but not in a repetitive way. It's an extraordinary interior. And I think there's a lot of attention going into how do you use new engineered products, new technologies in innovative ways. And it goes back to what Pierre was saying about innovation. I mean, the Nomura Institute in Japan has said the only sustainable way forward for all of us in professions and in construction is to look at innovation. And without innovation, we're going backwards, because we can't compete with people that can produce things cheaper than us. And I'll go on and bang the drum about innovation all the time, because we can stand in fear of the lawyers and everything else, or we can say, as Steve Jobs said, you're only here once. We have to do what we do and get on with it. And to move to the commercial thing, move from housing, because this is BSkyB's training headquarters in West London. It's what they call their Believe in Better Building project. And they, for an organisation like BSkyB, say we want a very sustainable building, our customer base, everything else, we want to show our clients this is where our heads are at. So this building is it's cross-laminated timber, it's glulam, it's timber cassettes, all prefabricated, all very precisely constructed, all very quickly constructed, and it's about delivering healthy working environments as well. Because when you've got exposed timber like this, timber is what they call it's a hygroscopic material, but it means that the wood actually, when it's exposed, kind of breathes. It absorbs moisture in the air and it puts out moisture again. So the air quality in these buildings is much better as well. And just to extend that a little bit, this is a 40-storey CLT tower in Portland, but which is going up at the moment. There's 12 stories of cross-laminated timber and glulam. But this isn't where it started, because it started in London. You know, in Scotland, we built up to 7 stories in platform timber frame in our sleep. We do it all the time. Down south, that didn't happen. In 1984, World in Action panned Barratt's for the quality of timber frame housing. They were doing timber frame construction, died in England at that point. It's coming back again because the government targets for housing are such, and the new regulations for thermal issues, air tightness issues, and so on, mean that traditional construction just cannot meet it. And in the last 8 or 10 years, so many skilled people have left the construction industry because of the recession, no jobs, and so on. The skills aren't there, so unless we prefabricate, unless we build in a different way, we're never going to hit the housing targets that we're talking about. So this one here is a masonry base for nothing to do with the construction. It's to do with, there's two forms of tenure here. There's expensive apartments and there's the affordable housing. And there's two different staircases and entrances because that's the kind of way they do things in England. But this is a honeycomb structure of cross-laminated timber. It's the first solid timber tower in the world. It's 8 stories above the ground floor level. And this changed engineers' perceptions of what could be done completely, not just here, but around the world, because suddenly we could go taller than 7 stories in timber. And the same architects nearby built studios for themselves and so on, because the kind of urban conditions in London, you know, where you've got the underground, you've got Victorian sewers, you've got all sorts of things affecting the kind of foundations you can do. You need lighter structures. You also, the density of a city like London means you need to be able to deliver quickly and get stuff off the trucks quickly. There's no space to store things or anything else, so you need to be able to just crane off the lorry straight onto the construction. And in a similar way, this is what they've done in Bergen, except that they sailed everything up in a container ship and just lifted the modules into what effectively is a sort of bridge truss structure. The only reason it's only 14 stories is because the regulations in Bergen wouldn't allow them to go higher, but they could have gone much higher. And I'm showing you these about tall construction because that's where so much of the thinking is going on, because of the first slide I showed you about urban densities, land costs, land scarcity, and so on. This is actually about 9 or 10 stories up in the north of British Columbia. It's by an architect called Michael Green. He produced a book for the Forest Innovation Organisation in Canada showing how to build 20-story commercial buildings in timber. And that's had a huge impact as well. This is actually their Wood Innovation Centre in British Columbia. They've quite all wood in British Columbia, but even they want to find new uses and new technologies that will allow them to get better value from it. And that building is a kind of hybrid of structural hybrid, but it's also it's a mixture of looking at modern methods of construction and building, because you couldn't really do the complexity of modern building in this kind of way without this in terms of prefabricating everything, expecting it to come to site and all fit together. The tall buildings are really moving forward. And this is, I'm showing you wooden buildings because that's the world I work in. This is one Michael Green's proposed in Vancouver at the moment. He's proposed one in Paris at the moment, which is waiting for announcement. This one is going ahead in Stockholm, 34 stories by a firm in Denmark, C.F. Muller. And I've been working with these guys, SOM in Chicago, looking at, they decided to look at a building they did in 1964 in steel and concrete and said, could we actually do that in wood? And they've done a huge research project to show that they could actually do it in wood, but they have to do it with concrete connections, because in a windy city like Chicago, a lightweight structure of wood at that height blows around quite a lot, so they've actually got to add weight to it, which is a paradox. But and in London the other day, this is announced 80 stories in wood. You know, so the engineers are really pushing the boat here about how far they can go. And the thing about it is that, going back to Pierre's point about it, it's because the nature of the technology has changed, it's allowed them to think differently about the way they're designing. It's allowed them to be more innovative about the way they're conceiving buildings and finding ways of doing structuring solutions and so on. I'm running a conference in London on the 28th of June about what we call the vertical timber city. So it's not just individual buildings, but how do we form whole districts. Not because I'm an advocate of tall buildings as such, but because if that's the way the technology is going, we have to find better ways of making it sustainable communities and habitable environments and so on, and work a path through all of that. And as I say, timber cities, clearly, I was out in China, they know they're building cities like crazy. I was in one outside Shanghai, 1 million people can overspill from a 28 million population city. And they're building them at speed, but they know they're taking the world's raw materials and building like crazy, but they know they're building places that have got poor environments, you know, poor air quality,
lots of pollution, and they know they need to build differently. They know they need to become more au fait with renewables. It's not a black and white thing with China. They do know where they need to be going, and they need to change, and they need to change fast and hit their own housing targets. So cities, and the whole point about just moving beyond kind of orthogonal construction is part of what we're looking at. And this whole thing of looking at whole city districts, but also how you make them self-sustaining in terms of the way they, through daily use, the way they're used, whether for habitation in offices or whatever, they're actually generating energy which can be put back into the grid. Not just using it, not just consuming energy, but generating it. And there's a lot of work I've been doing with people at a few other universities about this whole thing, about how we really make buildings active. In Norway, they're doing it in Oslo with a whole range of buildings, because they're looking, not Oslo, but the size of Edinburgh. It's, but they see that by 2050 we will have doubled in size, because again, people are gravitating from the countryside to the city. And they're planning the infrastructure, they're planning the schools, they're planning all the things we don't do in Edinburgh. You know, but the point being there that the buildings that they're putting up, whether they're very tall offices or whether they're kind of meteorological institutes, they're all generating energy back into the grid from the way that they're using them. And it's also about the spaces between buildings, you know, how we see the kind of quality in the public space and so on. This is just a little building in Zug in Switzerland, but it's made of Accoya. It's a modified wood. I've talked about engineered timbers, but wood modifications with chemicals or with heat treatments to change the cell structure of the wood, to make it perform completely differently from the way that species would work normally, so that we can take non-durable species, you know, like Sitka, different things, and, well, we can't do Sitka this way, but radiata pine from New Zealand is made into this product called Accoya through a process of acetylation, which is like the vinegar you put your chips and you cook the wood in a vacuum in that, and it changes it completely to be impervious to water. This is a project in the Netherlands, the lining canals with it. It's called the Moses Bridge for obvious reasons for those who went to Sunday school. But it's also the public are seeing these things, and they're seeing wood exposed to water in a way that's not been done before. They're even building bridges that just float in the water. So it's quite a radical kind of move. Beautifully put together, beautifully manufactured, and yeah, maybe there's health and safety issues, but if you're daft enough not to walk in the bit in the centre, really, you know, who's to say? I don't know how that would work with the lawyers in terms of who's responsible. I'll change tack slightly, because part of this is also about what we need to do to change the construction community, change the professions in terms of training, give them understanding that there are things are changing, things are moving forward in terms of technologies, and we need to be ready for them, we need to be skilled in them. This is a project I initiated and I've been running with the Scottish Government for the last 3-4 years, a project called Scottish Scenic Routes, and we've been building small structures around Scotland using young architects and engineers to develop small projects that improve the tourism infrastructure and hopefully will help create employment and sustain rural communities. But it's also about employing a lot of the young talent we have who are not getting anywhere during the recession and couldn't finish their final part of their qualifications because they couldn't get any experience. We've been running competitions, mentoring young designers, building projects. This one here at the west side of Loch Lomond in the A82 is it's an all-timber structure. It's, you can see where the pipes come down to the hydro station, but it's also where the boats come in, tourist boats come in. And it's like, we're trying to develop these things to test ideas, to test materials and products, but also to give experience to young talent and to enhance the landscape, if you like. They're fantastic locations. I should say, actually, just as an aside here, we put the binoculars on there because there was a VAT issue with the building. And for some complex reason that I still don't quite understand, we were able to kind of offset that by having the binoculars there, because they became a kind of public kind of thing. And the binoculars now earn about £2,000 a month, and people putting £1 in the slot at the time. So it's the payback in the building is quite good. It's, so just to finish, to take forward a lot of this, I'm running a series of conferences for Wood for Good. about the use of timber in modern housing. It goes from innovation to prefabrication to looking at custom build, which is a big, big thing in England now in terms of how to get the amount of house building the government's looking for, and also looking at solid timber housing in the vertical timber city. So the first one we're doing is on the 3rd of May. It's about innovation, and it really is looking at it in terms of what's available in Scotland, in terms of the new Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, what the resources are to assist you and teams of people to develop new ideas and so on. And also with looking at Zero Waste Scotland, back to the point that was made earlier, because where I come from, I've been through all the lean economy stuff. I'm looking at where it ties into the circular economy. So that look that Pierre showed, is how we take products from raw material right through and back into use multiple times. So every piece of wood I look at, I think it doesn't go from a forest to a product to the bin or the fire. It goes through about 20 different stages of use that we can invent to do something with before you mince it up to do something else. So that's it. I've tried to be a bit more optimistic about construction, but at the same time, modern methods of construction, it's the future. BIM, whether you like it or not, is the future. We need to all get better at it, and because I think you go from wanting to kind of do these kind of things, to be inspired by them, and think, how do we do things, to learning a little bit, to maybe coming to people like me for support, information, guidance, and with practice, with getting projects and doing things, you get experience. And with experience, you become, as a community of construction experts, more creative. And creativity doesn't mean disaster, it means opportunity, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you very much.